Welcome back to EWTN's coverage of World Youth Day 2016 in Krakow, Poland. I am Father Mark Mary, and I'm joined with Ivo Bender, who works for EWTN as a marketing rep here in Poland. And our Holy Father is currently meeting with the President of Poland, and then he will be meeting later with the bishops of Poland. And there's been some talk about that meeting. Do you know anything about that, Ivo?
Well, I mean, first of all, now we have this typical part of a highest level diplomatic visit of one head of state meeting another head of state. So Pope Francis is talking to the President of Poland, Dr. Andrzej Duda, and it's an interesting fact that the diplomatic relations between Poland and the Holy See have a history of over 1,000 years, because the first Prince of Poland, we mentioned Mieszko I, who decided to accept Christianity and embraced it and then spread it across the country. In fact, we have a document which is interpreted by historians as submitting Poland under the protection of the Holy See, of the Holy Father. So in medieval terms, it really meant that the newly formed country of Poland, you could say, reported directly to the Holy Father, as opposed to going through different kings and emperors, etc., etc. It had the shortcut, so to speak, to the highest power of that period. And then those relations, of course, continued throughout ages. One of the high points was the appreciation of the great victory of 1683, when King John III Sobieski saved Vienna and Europe during a major Turkish invasion in the Great Battle, the Siege of Vienna. And the pontiff at that time has given a very symbolic and generous set of gifts to King John, including a incredible, beautiful sword that is miraculously survived and can be seen in the museum at the Wawel castle that we see on screen right now.
Right. I should correct something I said before. I misspoke. In talking about John Paul's first Mass, it was actually at Wawel Cathedral. He was ordained in the Archbishop's residence. And then on November 2nd, All Souls Day, he offered the three Masses at St. Leonard's Crypt chapel or altar, and that's where he offered his first three Masses. And maybe we could talk more about the cathedral itself. We see it on the left of our screen, and obviously there's side chapels jutting out, and we've mentioned that the relics of St. Stanislaus is there, and St. Hedwig.
Yes, and also if you just look at the cathedral, it really tells the history of the of Poland, because if you see, it's made of different materials. You see the white sandstone, you see the red brick, you see that the towers have completely different spires on top of them, because this is basically different architectural and cultural periods of the country. So we have the first buildings on the site really date way back to the 10th century, and then we have the Romanesque style of the white sandstone, then the Gothic of the red brick, and then we have Renaissance spires. And very interestingly, there were add-ons all the time. It was almost like a living creature that grew new little attachments to it. So the two little buildings that you see to the right of the tower of the cathedral are the major chapels, and especially if you look to the chapel with a golden roof, it's actually gold plated, and it's the chapel in which some of the greatest kings of Poland were buried. And of course, there's an interesting little detail here. If you can see, the dome of the chapel is crowned by a royal crown, but above the crown there is a large golden cross, in a sense saying that the temporal power of the king, even the greatest king, because we are talking about the two Sigismunds, who were absolutely the most successful, you could say, monarchs of Poland, that there still is a higher power above them.
Right. And it is hard to see, but there's actually a golden crown above that golden dome that rests on the top of that dome, and then in that crown is a cross above it. And as Ivo said, it's a powerful image of the divine order being above the temporal order, and that the temporal order is to be informed by the lawgiver, God himself. And I was talking about this the other day, that our civil government, the state, is to form a society, a just society, according to the natural law. That natural law is knowable by reason. It applies to all men, not just Christians or Muslims or a particular religious group, but it applies to all in our common humanity, because we know it by reason, and we all have reason. And that natural law, though, is still, even though we call it natural, it's still given by God. I mean, the whole natural world is created by God.
And yeah, although it's probably good to be the king, there is, each king should remember and is reminded by this particular chapel that he has someone that he is actually reporting to, in a sense, right? So he's not the top guy. No. That's a very powerful thing. And in fact, throughout history, you could say that probably the majority of the Polish kings were very, very aware of that fact. That, of course, yes, they were the kings of the land, but there was a higher power above them, which limited what they could do.
And John Paul said that, as I mentioned, he offered his first Mass at Wawel Cathedral here, which you're looking at, and he chose the St. Leonard Crypt for these. It was on All Souls Day, so we could offer 3 Masses. And he said, quote, "to express my special spiritual bond with the history of Poland, and to obviously pay tribute to the panoply of Polish heroes buried nearby." We're getting this from George Weigel's book on Krakow, the city of Krakow. And he said, who were, quote, extremely influential in my education as a Christian and a patriot. And, us as Americans, it's so striking to see, Krakow at one time was the capital of Poland. And this is the center of the city. This is the center of Polish history. This is the image of the ideal Polish state. And you see the castle, symbol of the temporal sphere, right next to the cathedral, right? And it looks like the cathedral is a little taller too. So,
well, yes, but the palace is definitely much more spacious. Actually, the cathedral inside is probably the size of a small parish church, partially due to the fact that there are so many tombs of the great kings inside, and in fact, that also explains why some of the other monarchs had to be buried in those side chapels that were added on later on. But when it was originally being built in the Middle Ages, it was still quite an imposing building to behold. It's just in modern times we expect churches to be truly monumental, but at that time that was truly monumental.
Right, and definitely, and so we see this weaving together, these two spheres, and that is what we're wrestling with today. I mean, we are. Atheism certainly has always existed, but now modern atheism is not a peaceful coexistence by the modern atheists. So they're saying the biblical Christianity is the enemy. You guys are a problem. And we've seen the totalitarian systems of the 20th century all try to embrace secularism, this view of man devoid of God, and we see that in communism and fascism, and it's just been horrific consequences.
And the consequences of it are yes, indeed, as you said, Father. I mean, I think it's a very, very good insight from probably one of the greatest Christian writers of the 20th century, G.K. Chesterton, who said that when people stop believing in God, they'll believe in anything, and those anything things meant communism and National Socialism, that two great plagues that cost the lives of hundreds of millions of people.
And I'm talking to a person. Ivo was born in 1969.
Correct.
And you lived under the Soviet rule here in Poland, so you've seen this firsthand.
Yes, and thank God that this nightmare is over.
Yeah.
But in a sense, you look at this period with a certain, what's, for lack of a better word, a certain sentiment, because you knew that the church stood for good, and you knew what the danger was and what the real enemy of humanity was. Right? It was very easily defined. It was in my case Soviet communism, and of course nowadays it's much easier to sort of get lost, because the simple compass pointing good, bad, and choose is much more difficult to read.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about Cardinal Dziwisz. He will be making a speech to our Holy Father, and he had the Mass here to kick off officially World Youth Day. He's the Cardinal of Krakow. He was the secretary of John Paul. He was born in, I looked up some information, he was born in 1939 in, I'll let you pronounce this.
Rabavizhna.
Took the words right out of my mouth, which is near Zakopane, which is in the south, near the Tatras Mountains.
Absolutely, it's a very interesting and characteristic part of Poland. The mountains, the Tatra Mountains, and right beneath the Tatra Mountains, and these are the Highlanders. And the Polish Highlanders, just as Scottish Highlanders or any Highlanders, they tend to be tough people. They have to they lead a difficult life. It's facing the elements and tough winters, and they're also traditionally they were shepherds. So there is another very important symbolism here.
Right.
And I think it was no accident that John Paul, when he was still bishop of Krakow, selected a young priest from among the Highlanders to be his secretary, and probably neither Karol Wojtyła nor Father Stanisław Dziwisz could suspect that on this road that they started together, they will actually reach the Vatican Hill,
Right.
Another mountain.
Yeah, I think I'd read that he had asked him, would you come and help me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a simple phrase, and launched on this incredible journey that would take you to the papacy as secretary.
And I had the privilege of being, shall we say, behind the scenes when Cardinal Dziwisz was granting an interview to EWTN several years ago, and he basically was telling us how he says, so when should I start? Well, did you bring all your things with you? Well, you're starting now. So a quick decision that took the current Archbishop of Krakow, Cardinal Stanisław Dziwisz, from the small settlement of Rabavizhna to Rome, and now back in the historic and symbolic seat of the Archbishops of Krakow, and of whom so many are remembered in Polish history as absolutely great, fantastic leaders who provided what the country needed, especially in the difficult period of partitions in the 19th century, and also during the Second World War, and then the Soviet domination.
And he was, Cardinal Dziwisz was ordained a priest in 1963 by then Bishop Wojtyła. He served 2 years in a parish. In 1966, he began as secretary to Archbishop Wojtyła. And I didn't realize this, but he did complete, during that time, early time as secretary, he completed his doctoral studies, and certainly just had an incredible sense of duty, devotion, discretion in working with our Holy Father. And interesting, too, his background, as you mentioned, Highlander from a rural area, and came from a large family. And, John Paul came from he was basically all alone by the time, I think he was almost 20 when he lost his father. So he'd lost his brother, and his mom had died when he was a young boy. And I was thinking about, being the first non-Italian pope in well over 400 years, I'm sure Cardinal Dziwisz's presence there in the Vatican was very important for him. Just I mean, I think he was ordained. I mean, I think he was elected Pope in his like 58, and all of a sudden you're in this very Italian world, very different from the Polish world. But to have this friend with you, I would think would be
Yeah.
very important.
Yes, but of course, and we know that. But I think also Cardinal Dziwisz is very discreet about the sort of personal relationship
Mhm.
with John Paul. I mean, there is a certain um, reverence. I guess that's probably the word to describe it. Whenever Cardinal Dziwisz is asked about Saint Paul,
Yeah.
Saint John Paul II, there is reverence. There is a certain quiet peacefulness when he replies, never in an evasive way, but always in a very gentle way.
And then when St. John Paul ordained him a bishop, St. Peter's, in 1998, in the homily, there was others people ordained as well, but he thanked Cardinal Dziwisz personally for sharing my trials and joys, hopes and fears, during his entire pontificate and beyond. So, a beautiful thing to see. And he's written a book about his experiences with the Pope, and wonderful book. I read it. I really hope he writes more because this guy must know this cardinal must know a lot about the great Saint John Paul, and so hopefully. But it's really interesting. He talked about some big moments in the papacy and what that was like, and just wonderful reflections. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment in our continuing coverage of our Holy Father's arrival and address to the Polish bishops. So we'll be back in a moment. to our continuing coverage of Pope Francis, his arrival at Wawel Castle in the cathedral there. And he's currently still speaking with the President of Poland. My name is Father Mark Mary. I'm with Ivo Bender. And we have the text here of our Holy Father's address to the diplomatic corps. What are some of your thoughts on that, Ivo?
Well, I think in a sense, I have almost a feeling of deja vu, because this is very much what John Paul, in the tradition of what John Paul II was emphasizing, the importance of memory and identity. And I think one important element that Pope Francis is underlining here is that basically there is the good memory and there is the bad memory, and that we have to strive to prevent the bad memories, the bad history, from overpowering us. Yeah? If we fixate too much on horrible things that happen, maybe we have less. Maybe we have less time to concentrate on the good memories that can propel us in the correct direction.
Right. Sometimes we forget that as Americans, the effects of World War II and, a continent at war, and they established that the soldiers would come to Lourdes. They still do that, an annual pilgrimage every year for the military to come to Lourdes. I was able to be part of that one year, and it's a beautiful time of healing. And so Pope Francis is trying to encourage them along those lines of healing after so many wounds, so much war.
And I think another very important point underlined by the pontiff is that the importance of the remembering that the sanctity of the human life and the dignity of the man, of the person. These are the basic foundations of the unchanging message of the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
So. So now we have the meeting between the pontiff and the President of Poland has apparently ended, and now they're walking across the courtyard, magnificent courtyard of the Wawel Castle.
He even compares it to the Jewish people returning from the Babylonian captivity. After the storms and darkness, your people have regained its dignity, like the Jews returning from Babylon. And that is such a central event in the formation of Jewish people. And that they
sang with joy, right?
Yeah.
So when the hardship ended, let's not forget to sing with joy. I think this is this time a very typical Pope Francis thing. Do not forget to smile and rejoice when the storm has passed away, passed, and it's time to celebrate. It's time to be happy.
Yeah, he quotes Psalm 126, which I absolutely love. We were like those who were dreaming. Our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongues with shouts of joy. That's when they were brought back through human instruments, but brought back from their captivity in Babylon to Jerusalem. They could rebuild the temple. But when God works, it always comes and we experience it as a gift. His working in our lives, his gifts of the Holy Spirit, his renewal that he brings is like a gift that fills us with joy. We all love to receive gifts, and in our relationship with God, it's all gift. And so especially when we appeal to God to heal these wounds that we suffer, and especially as a nation, we're given something better than even what we've had before. God is a great healer.
Yeah, I'll tell you when, but just have it ready.
So there's the president and one of his assistants on the right, or
yes, I believe that's the chief of protocol, and they are now standing in front of the entrance to the Wawel Cathedral.
Afterwards, okay?
Okay.
I don't think there is a lay.
Okay, so here Cardinal Dziwisz welcomes Pope Francis as the host of the Wawel Cathedral. As the Archbishop of Krakow, he invites him to enter the this beautiful holy shrine.
Somebody needs to do the translation of Dziwisz's speech, which we have the script. Father Mark has the script of it, so perhaps you can follow it to see if it goes off script at all. I don't think Dziwisz typically does. So, Father Mark, if you think you can follow the Polish, you can do it, or if you want to have Ivo do it.
Do I read it?
Can you bring down Ivo's mic? Bring down both mics right now. And English. Bring down both mics in English.
Some of this, what we're seeing inside of Wawel Cathedral.
Yes. So as I mentioned, it's not a very large church now. The Pope Francis is approaching the reliquary of Bishop Martyr Saint Stanislaus, which is at the center of the cathedral. Solid silver, ancient reliquary.
Do you know the dating maybe of some of the?
Well, what we have here is one very fortunate thing about the history of Krakow is the fact that the city was spared major destruction during the Second World War. So in fact, what we're looking at is a church that was that accumulated various shrines and works of art, etc., throughout ages. And here we have the reliquary of Saint John Paul II in the form of the book. If you remember the funeral,
it's the Book of the Gospels.
Yes, exactly.
That was on his
the pages
coffin,
were
right?
Yeah. So.
And is it a vial of his blood that
Yes,
is there too?
yes.
Okay, so that's in the golden
Yes.
box there.
Yes.
You remember, yes, at his funeral they had the Book of the Gospels placed on his simple wooden coffin, and it was flying open in the wind.
Yeah.
You know, the pages were turning. So that is the Book of the Gospels there.
It's a moment of silent prayer by Pope Francis.
And the relics of Saint Stanislaus would be
In the silver large reliquary in the center of this altars between the golden columns.
okay.
So now we have the white marble tombstone of Queen Hedwig.
Yeah, you might be hearing some music behind us. We're at Bonia Park, and they're preparing for future events here. So they're running through some of the
we just
music.
had sorry, Father, we just had a glimpse of a miraculous medieval masterpiece that we know that Saint Hedwig used to pray before that particular crucifix, which can still be seen in the Wawel Cathedral.
Okay. And we have reestablished Vatican commentary, so we will go to that now for our audio and hopefully have the translation of Cardinal Dziwisz's address. Coming back in a minute.
The Holy Father will also present a gift to the cathedral. We will communicate that to you when we have that information. With him there is the Archbishop of Krakow, Cardinal Stanislaus Dziwisz, along with the President of the Polish Bishops' Conference, Archbishop Stanislaw Gadecki. A moment of prayer and recollection before he goes in to meet with the bishops of Poland, his brother bishops. We see an image of Our Lady of Czestochowa there, Our Lady of Poland, the Black Madonna, in this cathedral, which is in many ways the national church, the national sanctuary for this country. So much history here. Pope Francis and His Eminence Cardinal Dziwisz having concluded the moment of private prayer. Cardinal Dziwisz lovingly explaining various aspects of the cathedral to His Holiness. And we see there the bishops that are gathered for this meeting with Pope Francis. Cardinal Dziwisz will now welcome Pope Francis. I believe Cardinal Dziwisz is giving a copy of his remarks to the Holy Father.
Ojcze Święty,
Begins in Polish.
błogosławiony, który przychodzi w imię Pańskie,
He gave the Holy Father a translation of his remarks in Italian.
zamkniętymi z Ewangelii,
Cardinal Dziwisz begins,
witam Cię w królewskiej katedrze na Wawelu.
Holy Father,
W murach tej świątyni
blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
zapisywana
With these words of the gospel, I welcome you to Krakow,
pamięć o wielkich wydarzeniach,
the Wawel Cathedral.
o naszych zwycięstwach i
In
przegraniach.
the walls of this temple, the memory of the Polish nation has been recorded for 1,000 years.
Bije serce polskie.
The memory of the great events of our history, of our victories and defeats, of our sufferings and hopes. Here beats the heart of Poland.
Praw człowieka, który w XI wieku
Here lies the Bishop of Krakow and martyr Saint Stanislaus,
stał się patronem
intrepid defender of human rights, who in the 9th century gave his life in defense of the people and has become the patron of the moral order in our homeland.
Kardynał Karol Wojtyła.
Cardinal Karol Wojtyła,
W październiku
the Metropolitan of Krakow,
1978
celebrated Mass in this cathedral many times. From here, he left for Rome in October 1978 to become the Bishop of the Eternal City.
Dzisiaj biskup Rzymu.
He returned here several times as John Paul II. Now, the Bishop of Rome has come to us to live this celebration of faith with young people from around the world, to confirm all of us in the faith, to show the world the young and merciful face of the Church.
1050. rocznicę chrztu Polski I w roku Świętym Miłosierdzia.
How can we not thank the Almighty for all that we are living in this 1050th anniversary of the baptism of Poland and in the Holy Year of Mercy?
Przynależności do Kościoła powszechnego, przekraczającego granice narodów, kultur I języków. Będziemy wsłuchiwać.
Holy Father, we welcome you with great joy. Your presence among us deepens our awareness of belonging to the universal church that overcomes the boundaries of countries, cultures, and languages. We will give ear to your words. We will keep our eyes fixed on your friendly face. In a word, we rejoice in your presence that reawakens the sentiments of goodness and love, brotherhood and solidarity that slumber within us. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Holy Father, welcome. We rejoice and thank you. This is a gift from Pope Francis to the cathedral. Usually a chalice, so that each time a Mass is celebrated, they will be spiritually united.
Umiłowany Ojcze Święty, witamy Cię dzisiaj w Polsce z największą radością. Witamy w duchu głębokiej wiary, jako Piotra naszych czasów.
And now the sound has faded out, and this is when the private part of their meetings begin. This very informal conversation here in the Cathedral of Wawel. The Holy Father, at his specific request, wanted this to be a closed-door meetings because with his brother bishops, as he's done in America and Latin America and North America, he likes to speak to them as brothers, as friends, informally, and everyone can be free to say what they want to say. So this part of it will remain private. After this meeting, in just about an hour's time, the Holy Father will make his way to the Archbishop's residence, where he'll be staying throughout the duration of World Youth Day. He'll have a private dinner, and then he'll greet groups of people gathered under the papal window there. So we will end our commentary here. We'll pick up again tomorrow with further events in this World Youth Day, and we invite you, wherever you're tuning into this ceremony today, to tune in for more tomorrow, as the Holy Father has a full schedule. He's going to Częstochowa, as we know, of a national shrine here in Poland, Our Lady of Częstochowa. We know how important that is for them. He'll pray in the chapel there in front of that image, and there'll be Mass commemorating the anniversary of Poland's baptism 1,050 years ago. And then, of course, he'll be heading over to be welcomed by the young people, and this will be the first time the Holy Father will be welcomed by the young people there. So this will be a long, very exciting day. We start to really get into the heart of the World Youth Day festivities, which will continue throughout the weekend. I'm Mary
You're
Shovelin on
watching
behalf
EWTN's coverage of World Youth Day in Krakow, Poland, 2016, and our Holy Father has arrived here in Poland at John Paul II airport, and he has met with the president, had a private conference with him, and made an address to the president and the diplomatic corps. And now he's over next door at Wawel Cathedral, and he's meeting with the bishops And I am joined by Father Raymond de Souza for this closing out of this event. And Father Raymond, maybe you could tell us some of your comments or observations about the Pope's address to the President.
Well, he arrived here and he really oriented the address around two themes: memory and identity. Praising Poland for its memory, its 1,000-year history of Christianity. He spoke about good memories, which recall what God has done, and bad memories, which nurse grievances from the past. What's interesting is in the text Memory and Identity, those who are careful students of John Paul will remember his last book was called Memory and Identity. It's actually a set of lectures or conversations that took place in the 1990s, but it was the last one published before he died. And it's a reflection on what does it mean to be Polish, what does it mean to be of a Christian nation, for identity. So in that sense, it was an homage to St. John Paul II, and that he chose those themes of memory and identity. And then for a pope who's spoken often about dialogue, he made an important caveat, or not caveat, but a premise which says we can only dialogue with others if we first know who we are. We can only talk with others in a sincere way if I know who I am, if I have a strong identity. And that is a bit of a correction, perhaps, to how some people have read Pope Francis, which is that it's about dialogue, 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 always going to the other and maybe forgetting, who you are. And in a land of like Poland, where the memory goes back over 1,000 years, I think that was an interesting point to, if you want to say, not correct so much what he said before, but to sort of say, look, if you're going to be in dialogue with your neighbors in Europe or with other cultures, you have to be strong in your Polish identity and in your Catholic identity.
Right. And those are certainly themes we've been hearing about and reflecting on. There's history is just very present in the structures and the culture here in Poland, and they are fiercely have a fierce sense of it, don't they?
Well, the place where the Pope is right now, Wawel Hill, where the royal palace is, where the Cathedral of Poland of Krakow is, it's really difficult for an American to understand, because to compare it to the White House is an insult to Wawel. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
This is the national repository of memory, of history. This is where the kings of Poland lived. They were crowned in the cathedral next door. They're buried in the cathedral. Many of them are saints. It's where the sainted martyr bishop of 1079, so more than 900 years ago, St. Stanislav, his relics are there on the altar. So this place, Krakow it's no longer the capital, but it is the ancient and royal capital. Wawel is the ecclesiastical center. The spiritual center of Poland is Our Lady of Częstochowa. The Pope's going there. But the ecclesiastical center of Poland is there. And that's where John Paul was, in that cathedral, serving Mass on First Friday, September 1st, 1939, when the Second World War started in Krakow. He heard the planes, the Luftwaffe, come and bomb this city. There's no more important place in the Polish national memory and identity than Wawel. It's where King Jan Sobieski, the king who defended Europe at Vienna against the Turks in 1683, he's buried there in the crypt. John Paul decided to have his first Mass in that crypt near the tomb of King Jan Sobieski. Very few other countries even have a place like Wawel where everything is brought together. And so that he's there speaking to the president, obviously in the palace, and then meeting the bishops there is very significant.
And what do you think he'll be saying to the bishops?
Well, there's a little bit of a kind of a drama father here, because whenever the Pope visits a country, he always has a meeting with the bishops and he gives them a talk, and it's almost always in public. I mean, if you remember when Pope Benedict was in the United States, he met with the bishops in the crypt of the National Cathedral. When Pope Francis was in the United States, he met with the bishops. That was on the schedule, and the Pope was supposed to give an address to them. He's doing that right now, but a few days ago, it was decided to be in private. No one knows why. It's very unusual, but we speculate that when the Holy Father went to Mexico in February, he gave an address to the bishops. It was a bit like the talk he gave to the Roman Curia, sort of listing their faults and their failings. It was very badly received. Obviously, at the moment, no one said anything. When the Holy Father returned to Rome, the Archdiocese of Mexico City sort of asked, who's advising the Holy Father about this? It was not a beautiful encounter, in that it was odd on a visit to a country to be so critical. the Polish episcopate as a whole has had some friction with Pope Francis over the last 2 years, really over the Synod on the Family. They felt that some of the directions at the Synod were questioning the teaching of John Paul. They're very loyal to him. They were very vocal as the Holy Father invited everybody to be vocal, but they were very vocal in saying, we want to defend the vision of family and marriage and sexuality of St. John Paul II. And so there was, if you want to say, a little bit of friction between the Polish bishops as a whole and the Holy Father. And I think, but this is my speculation, no one obviously has said this on either side, is that they thought, let them speak in private. We're going to find out soon enough. There's a few dozen in there. We're going to hear a little bit of what he said. But I think the idea of, if he wanted a kind of a frank address, he's here for World Youth Day. That's the main point. You don't want to sort of have a bit of an off-key note in this awkwardness. And usually that doesn't happen, but it did happen, and that was the most recent trip, or not the most recent trip, but in Mexico just earlier this year. And that address to the bishops didn't go so well. And so I think that here, maybe they're deciding to be a little bit more cautious.
And I think in general, it just seems like a very proper thing to do. I mean, these are real meetings. He's the real chief shepherd, and that why should that be made public? I mean, this should be a frank discussion among brothers there that can get real with each other. So
well, that's not that may be what's going on today, but normally it's a formal address. There's no exchange really back and forth, and so it's a bit of a departure from the norm, and it might be a real conversation. Well, we don't know. It was changed toward in the recent days. So most likely, with most things that are of that great importance, we're going to find out roughly what he talked about and why they decided to have it in private.
Right. I was hoping to talk to you also about your experiences in Poland, that you were part of the Tertio Millennio.
Yes, there's a seminar that's been going on here. A few Americans, actually, Michael Novak, Father Richard John Newhouse, the late Father Newhouse, and George Weigel, the papal biographer. Even before he took on that project, they, along with the Polish Dominican, Father Maciek Ziemba, started a seminar in 1992 to examine the teaching of John Paul about the Free Society. So what was John Paul's distinctive Catholic social doctrine? They started in 1992, the year after Centesimus Annus. That was John Paul's vision of the Free Society after the defeat of communism. And the first 2 years it was held in Liechtenstein, which is not a very well-known place. And but after the first 2 years, they were talking to John Paul about this. He was supportive of the project, and he suggested, and they were eager, they moved it to Krakow. And it's 30 students, 10 usually from North America, 10 from Poland, and 10 from other countries in Eastern and Central Europe. So it could be Ukraine, Lithuania, Hungary, Czech. And we meet for 3 weeks. And I came in 1994, the first year was in Krakow, so that's already 22 years ago. It's a marvelous exchange. It really is an encounter from people of different countries and across the ocean, and studying what is John Paul's vision for a free society that has freedom, especially political and economic freedom, but at the same time is not freedom for its own sake, but freedom for a purpose, freedom for greatness, freedom for virtue, freedom for solidarity, freedom for creativity. Since Father Newhouse died in 2009, I've started teaching on the program, so I come back every summer. We were here earlier this month, for our seminar, and it's brought me to Krakow, I think, 10 times now, and so I feel very much at home here. And what I've come to appreciate, not just the person and teaching of John Paul, but I've come to appreciate that Krakow is a pilgrimage place on equivalent with Rome, Jerusalem, Fatima, Guadalupe, Santiago de Compostela. These places that, I mean, obviously some of them, like Rome and Jerusalem, had historical events, but other places they were sanctified really not so much by an event, but by the history of the Christian people there. And as Cardinal Dziwisz points out, no city in the world has as many saints as Krakow, aside from Rome.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
We were with the students this morning, or the students' young people this morning at the English-speaking site. They have relics there of 5 saints, not Polish saints, 5 Krakowian saints, right? From here. So, that seminar really introduced me to both the teaching of John Paul first, the person and history of John Paul II, and then the reality and history of Krakow third. And that's really what is being conveyed in different ways through the saints' relics, through the images, through the catechesis, through the visits where Pope Francis is making. All that is being conveyed in some way to the young people of World Youth Day. And Pope Francis, in his only public address today to the diplomats and to the president, he touched on that by talking about this country of sort of heroic fidelity over more than 1,000 years. And when Cardinal Dziwisz just welcomed the Holy Father in the Cathedral of Wawel, he of course made reference to that same history.
I've heard the Holy Father mentioned he's very much looking forward to his visit to Jasna Gora, which you reminded us is the spiritual center.
Yeah.
And then why did you use that phrase, the spiritual center of Poland?
Well, you have to, I mean, when you have a 1,000-year rich Catholic history, you've got more than one thing going on. And Wawel here, where the Holy Father is at the moment, that's the cathedral of the capital. That's the most important people in Polish history are buried there. That's where the kings were crowned. So that is, in a sense, the real heart of Poland, which goes back, remember, to the 10th and 11th century. Now, it sounds funny for a North American, a Canadian or American to say, but Jasna Gora came after. You know, Wawel was already up and going, established.
Right.
Our Lady of Częstochowa, or Our Lady of the Bright Mountain, Jasna Gora, the Black Madonna, sometimes she's called that for the darkness of the image. They had their 600th anniversary in 1982, so that goes back to 1382, that the history of the cult there. So in a certain sense, this is the capital, the royal capital, if you want to say the heart of the church. But there's no doubt that this Marian people, this Polish people, who've said they've never have a queen because there's only one Queen of Poland, the Blessed Mother, that's where they go on pilgrimage. That's where the identity of the Polish people, as a Catholic people, as a Marian people, is most evident. And so that really is the spiritual center. And the Holy Father will be going there tomorrow with all the Polish bishops. I mean, he'll go by helicopter. They may drive overnight, I'm not sure. And they'll have a mass there in honor of really it's the 1050th anniversary of Polish Christianity, but really what it is, it's the 50th anniversary of the Millennium celebrations in 1966. We'll talk a lot about that tomorrow, I think, when the Polish bishops invited Pope Paul VI to come to celebrate the Millennium of Polish Christianity. Right. The preparation for that under Cardinal Wierzyński had been a kind of a way of asserting Polish identity and Polish history against the communists. So they said absolutely not. Pope Paul VI will not be allowed to come. Wierzyński went ahead with the ceremony with a big empty throne where he put the picture of Paul VI there. Cardinal Wojtyła was at his side, or Archbishop Wojtyła at the time. 50 years later, this is a sort of a corrective to say, okay, the Pope was not allowed by the communists to come for the 1000th anniversary. It's the 50th anniversary of the millennium. Poland is free. The Holy Father is here, and that's what they're going to celebrate tomorrow at Jasna Gora.
Okay. And we should go over maybe the schedule a little bit. So we have that the Holy Father's going tomorrow to Jasna Gora. He's having the Mass, and then there's a welcoming center back here at Wonia Park. And the young people will be here gathered to meet him. There'll be many programs here that evening, tomorrow evening. And then Friday, he's making a trip to Auschwitz and Birkenau. There'll be a silent, prayerful pilgrimage for our Holy Father. And then to a children's hospital, and then the Way of the Cross in the evening, which is always a beautiful, magnificent, very artistic presentation of the Stations of the Cross. And moves many of the young people here. It's such a powerful presentation. Saturday, he is going to the Divine Mercy Shrine and the John Paul II Shrine right next door to that. And then evening, there's a Saturday evening vigil at Campus Misericordia. It's the prayer vigil with Pope Francis. And then, of course, the closing Mass on Sunday morning. And then he meets with the volunteers. World Youth Day would not happen without the many thousand volunteers here that are supporting all of this great work. So he meets with them and gives them an address personally, and then we have his departure back for Rome. So very full schedule, and we'll be bringing you all of that. And I think we're concluding our coverage now of our Holy Father's visit here with the bishops and the diplomatic corps at at the castle here in the Cathedral of Wawel Castle and Cathedral. And you can learn more about our Holy Father's visit at EWTN.com. We have a World Youth Day section on Facebook, EWTN's Facebook page. We have interviews, videos, photos, and a lot more than just what we can present you on television. We've been doing a lot of interviews during the day and talking with people, so all that will be presented there. And so this concludes our coverage this evening. I'd like to thank you, Father Raymond.
Thank you, Father Mark. Pleasure to be with you again.
Okay, and we'll see you tomorrow, World Youth Day in Krakow, Poland.